Hi guys, and welcome back. So this is episode 3 of the Sunken Forest. So in the last episode I planted and filled the tank up. So it's been sitting like this for a few days now because I actually left for a couple of days. So now it's finally time to hook up the CO2 system. So this is the CO2 system I'm going to be setting up on the tank today. So this is a bio CO2 system. So it's not like a high-tech pressurized system, but I have had good results with bio CO2 systems in the past. I have not tried this one specifically, so I am quite excited to try and to see the results with such a product. Okay, so let's take a look at this CO2 kit. So the CO2 kit is said to last 60 plus days, but they also do sell refills, which is just this powder that you refill directly into the bottle. Take a look at what exactly comes in this pack. So here we have the CO2 starter kit. It's just the bottle with the powder inside. We have a little bag with an activator inside, so it's going to activate this product. And then we just have CO2 diffuser with some tubing. So I'm taking a look at the diffuser, the small pipes, little sucker pads, and as much as this can be quite laughable, details matter, and this does look like pretty good quality, especially the diffuser. Sometimes in these bio CO2 kits they do give you a diffuser, but you know, it's not that good, so we will have to see how it performs later on in the video, but so far it does look pretty good. Okay, so you actually have to use hot water to activate this bottle, so I'm just going to heat this up. Okay, so this is a two-step setup. So I'm going to pour 300 milliliters of hot water into this bottle, shake it around. I have to leave it to set for 24 hours until it's completely solid. And then when I've done that, I have to mix the activator with water and pour it in. So it's going to take 24 hours to set this up. I have the impression like I'm 2 steps away from serving cocktails here, but that's fine. Okay, so now that it's all shaked up, I have to let it set for the next 24 hours and then we can move on to the next step. So the next day, the mix was nice and solid, so it was time to pour the activator inside the bottle. And this part got me a little bit confused because I could see there were like 5 activators in this bag and I couldn't really understand why until, well, I read the instructions again. So roughly what the instructions noted is that, well, it was going to deplete, and the bottle obviously depletes itself. And it said like every 2 weeks that you have to empty it and refill it with this activator mix that I'm doing right now. And if I can be completely honest, that's something for me that is pretty inconvenient. I have a lot of tanks, and if I have to every 2 weeks empty out this bottle and fit it back into place, well, it's not the most convenient, but that doesn't mean it won't be performant, right? I've used bio CO2 systems before, and this is the first time that I've had to actually refill them every 2 weeks. The one I used prior, I believe, lasted a little over 4 weeks before I had to touch it. So this is like half the durability of the other one that I tested out. I'm going to add the playlist card on the screen if you guys do want to check out that other system that I tried. So after filling up the bottle, screwing it down, everything was nice and secure, I ran into a problem, which was the tubing wasn't long enough. So that was Like that for me is quite inconvenient. With these bottles, again, the one I had tried prior had an extremely long tube, so it's really good if like you want to slide it into a piece of furniture, and you know, if you want it to be shorter, you can always cut it down, but when it's not long enough, it is quite inconvenient. So I swapped it with the tube that I had for the other bio CO2 system kit. So this bio CO2 system kit retails for about 20-ish, so it depends on which website you get it from, but it's in the 22 euro range. So that's 22 euros for the bottle, the tube, and the diffuser, and a mix that will last you 2 months. And if you want refills, a refill is around €9.99 for 2 months. So that's like €5 a month-ish to run this system. So yeah, depending on your budget, that's something you're willing to spend or not for this kind of kit. So the CO2 took about an hour to 2 hours to start the fusing. So here we can really see it in action. I do want to add that on the instructions, they do say that this kit is made for aquariums up to 60 litres. Do note that my aquarium is actually 90, so it's going to be a little bit underpowered, you know, with the size of my aquarium here, but I'm still going to try it out. So if this video is originally about me sitting on my CO2, right? But one morning when I walked past my tank, I was greeted by something very unsightly, which like looked like worms. And I decided to leave it in because this is all about the process of this tank and what I'm doing here. And believe me when I say that these things were everywhere. Like I could see them on every piece of wood, on every plant, so I decided to try and catch them because I wanted to try and identify and see like what was in my tank and where it was actually coming from, which was not an easy task, as you're going to discover. So most of these little things were actually hiding inside the cracks and the folds of the wood, so it really did make them extremely hard to catch. And I didn't think that worms were too smart, right? Obviously these ones were pretty smart, as you're gonna see. So I was unsuccessful on that one, but I did manage to catch a few other ones that were lying around the tank, and I put them in this little dish to take a closer look at them. And believe me when I say that they did not look happy to be in this small dish. Like, they looked actually quite annoyed, to say the least. So after taking a good look at them, I was like, these are bloodworms. Like, they look like bloodworms. So by all means, I'm not a biologist. I'm not the best in identifying larvae or anything like that, but these really did look like bloodworms. So I decided just to leave them in my tank because obviously I'm going to add fish, and it's only a matter of time before they're completely eaten up by the population. So my best bet here in how these bloodworms got into the tank is just through the wood, right? Wood is naturally sourced. A lot of aquarium woods aren't treated, right? So yeah, it can happen that sometimes they are contaminated by exterior things like insects, flies, a bunch of stuff. So yeah, this in no case is dangerous for the aquarium. So yeah, I just decided to leave it as is. So these are the images of the tank developing the first week. So we can see like there's a decent amount of growth for 1 week on a bio CO2 system here. And we can see that the tank is going through its natural cycling process. We can see that there is diatoms that are starting to appear on the rocks. There's a little bit of algae on the wood. So now that the tank has settled for a good week, what I like to do here is I like to introduce the first step of the cleanup crew, which for me are snails. So these are bladder snails. I find them extremely performant when it comes to eating diatoms, algae. They're also extremely fast. And as long as you're not overfeeding your tank, the population stays stable. So if you're somebody that overfeeds, or there's a lot of organic matter that's available in your tank, well, obviously they're going to thrive off it to a certain extent, and when there isn't any more algae, the population really does stabilize itself. So yeah, I like snails. Not everybody likes to put snails in their scapes, but I do find them extremely useful. What I like also about bladder snails is they are small in size, so they're really going to be able to clean off a lot of these hard to access areas like leaves, crevices in the wood, and because they are small, well, they're not as unsightly as like a massive snail in your scape, right? So again, people sometimes like nailrite snails. I'm not the biggest fan, because if you do get a nailrite snail that is a female, it's just going to lay a bunch of hard white eggs all over your hardscape. So again, some people aren't bothered by that. That for me is something that deeply bothers me. So this is why I prefer these kind of snails. So just when I thought that I was in the clear with the whole bloodworm story, suddenly I started to see like a bunch of stuff appear at the surface of my tank. So these are actually the larvae that are starting to hatch. And let me tell you that I had a hard time with these things. So here is actually a close-up of the larvae, like shell, its skin, where it hatches out of and just becomes some sort of small fly. Once hatched, this is what it looks like. So it kind of looks like a mosquito, but it isn't one. Again, I'm not a biologist. If you guys do know what it is, you can drop it in the comment section. So I can tolerate bloodworms. That's like free food in my tank, but like flies in my house, absolutely not. So about a week later, the snails had completely decimated the diatoms. Like there was absolutely nothing left. They did a great job at cleaning the wood, the rocks, the leaves of the plants also. So it was really time to like do like a big water change and a nice cleanup on the tank. At the end of the second week, just as expected, the bio-CO₂ system really did start to slow down. We can see it here on the images. So as the instructions stated, I emptied out the activator and poured some new one in. We are officially 1 month later. So the tank has been doing pretty well. There's a lot of decent growth. I'm quite happy with the progress of the scape. As you may see, I have done a few little changes. I added a coarser sand mix to the initial fine sand I had used for the path, because I really did find it just looked too unnatural. It looked really flat. So this one does add quite a lot of texture. It also has, different colors to it. So it just looks more natural in general. So there are a few things that I'm going to change in this layout. The first one being this front section, because I'm not the biggest fan of it. I don't like how it's developed. So what I do think is I'm going to take out this front section of plants and I'm going to actually sand it here. So it's going to create an opening. And it's also going to enhance the depth of the tank, because right now I feel like this part is just breaking the scape. It's visually, it's like a barrier, if that makes any sense at all. I've also slipped the CO₂ diffuser at the very back of the tank, just under the filter outflow. So this just gives a better circulation for the CO₂ inside the tank. So obviously the first weeks it was in front, because it's just easier for filming purposes, but it is better if you can put it near your filter outflow or somewhere where there's just a lot more circulation. I've also started to add fish. So these are like my senior neon tetras. So I don't have many of them left because they're just over 5 years old now. So this is going to be the retirement tank for them. I'm also going to add a lot more fish in the weeks to come. So I have to go to the fish shop to do that. But that will be a whole other video. Okay, so the moment we've all been waiting for, let's take a look at how the plants look after 1 month of running with the bio-CO₂ system. Right guys, so that is the end of this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions on the bio CO2 system, do drop them in the comments. Otherwise guys, I will see you next week for a new video.